Before we begin, let me explain. I have stood on Custer's Hill. I have walked the ridge where the marble markers lean like broken teeth. I know how this story ends, but I've always wondered how it began. What led to that fateful day in June of 1876? If only I could go back and see for myself. What might I finally come to understand? So I went back to the summer of 1874 and joined Custer's march into the Black Hills. It was that moment in history where the world heard there was gold in the Black Hills. 1,000 men, over 100 wagons, cavalry, infantry, Gatling guns, a brass band, and even President Grant's own son rode along. There was a press corps, botanists, seasoned miners, and an official photographer, William Illingworth, who was hired to show the people back east images in 3 dimensions using a newly developed stereoscopic camera. The official story was tidy. Scout a site for a fort, map the interior, study the flora. All very scientific and above board. In reality, this was not a patrol. This was a production. So I embedded as one of the journalists. No one questioned me. All it took was a notebook, a confident manner, and knowing just the right names. We were told anything we filed went to the quartermaster, which then went out with the nightly dispatch pouch to the nearest telegraph office, reaching the east in just days. Longhair, the name the Lakota gave Custer, was in the middle of it all and loving every minute. But here is what I knew and what the Army wasn't willing to say out loud. We were trespassing. 6 years earlier, the Treaty of Fort Laramie had set the Black Hills aside for the Lakota. No white man was to enter without permission. 1,000 soldiers traveling through this area was a treaty violation, pure and simple. The Lakota watched us carve our road into the heart of the sacred hills and named it exactly what it was. Not Custer's Trail, not the expedition route, but the Thieves Road. Then, as if on cue, the miners found what the miners were brought along to find. On French Creek, Horatio Ross swirled a pan and lifted out a few bright specks of gold. Barely a few flecks, but gold. I watched the press corps catch fire, reaching for the phrases that did the work. Gold lying from the grassroots down, and color in every shovelful. The Bismarck Tribune ran an extra. The headline needed only one word: gold. The dispatches poured out into a country still gutted by the panic of 1873. A broke and desperate country heard the call. Call it a discovery if you like, but I was there. It looked like something else. A launch, a campaign. Just bring in the soldiers to show the country can be taken. Bring in the miners so something is found. Bring the journalists so the whole nation hears about it. And you bring the photographer so everybody can see it. A modern man has words for it, a publicity stunt. And it worked. By spring, the rush was on. Thousands poured into treaty land, and the Army could not or would not keep them out. Deadwood rose from the mud. The hills the Lakota called the heart of everything became a nightmare of claims. Washington's solution was elegant in its dishonesty. First, offer to buy the land. When the Lakota refused to sell what was already theirs, the order came. Any tribe not on the reservation by January 31st of 1876 would be treated as hostile. It was an ultimatum dressed as an unrealistic deadline. You cannot move whole villages, children, and elders over hundreds of miles through a northern plains winter, and Washington knew it. The roundup was planned before the deadline even passed. It was decided it was best to strike while the tribes were frozen in place, burn their villages, let hunger and cold do the rest. But the winter defeated the Army too, and that plan failed. So a new plan was hatched. 3 Army columns, converging from 3 directions, would drive the tribes onto the reservation. It had been just 18 months between that pan was in the French Creek and the battle on the ridge above the Greasy Grass. On that, a hot June afternoon, Longhair and his 7th Cavalry rode down toward the largest gathering of free Lakota and Cheyenne the plains would ever see. I'm sure you know the rest of the story. That night, I sat by the fire with men who thought they were telling the world a wonderful story. I wanted to warn them what their dispatches would set loose, and tried to warn the soldiers, whose names I'd see again on stone, to be careful. I even leaned over to a young trooper and told him to ask for a transfer. He only laughed. But you cannot file a dispatch from the future. You can only watch the match strike and know. Looking back, only Illingworth's glass plates still tell the true story. They called it the Thieves Road. They were right. The theft just took a little while to finish. On this channel, I will keep going back to these moments because the people who lived through this couldn't see the whole shape of what they were starting. Some things are just seen better in hindsight. Subscribe and ride the Thieves Road with me to where it ends, a hot June afternoon in 1876.